Democracy is a majority rule scenario, where 51% rule over the remaining 49%. Freedom, on the other hand, says, I don't want anybody ruling over me, and I don't want to rule over you. Nowhere on earth can government serve the people. Government is a fiction that's lived out as a group of people who believe they have the moral right to command you and take your stuff. And they further believe that you have the moral right to obey them and let them take your stuff. But it goes even further. They believe that if you don't obey their commands and let them rob you, they reserve for themselves the moral obligation to punish you. And they call that justice. That's what the government truly is in concept and in practice. So who do the people in Western governments serve? Washington serves Israel, the military-industrial complex, Wall Street, the big banks, and the fossil fuel corporations. The entirety of the rest of the West serves Washington's district of criminals. Nowhere in the West do the people count. For example, the American working class, betrayed by the Democrats who sent their jobs to Asia, cast their votes for Donald Trump, and the American people were promptly dismissed by the Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton as the Trump deplorables. But the Democrats, like the Republicans, serve power and profit, not the people. In Europe, we see the squashing of liberty everywhere. British Prime Minister May has turned Brexit into subservience to the EU. The British people have learned that they don't count. They're nothing in the eyes of the government. The Greeks voted for a left-wing government that promised to protect them from the EU, the IMF, and the big banks, but were promptly sold out with austerity agreements that destroyed what remained of Greek sovereignty and Greek living standards. And what was the result? Today, the EU has reduced Greece to a third world country. The French have been in the streets in revolt for weeks against the French Rothschilds president, who serves everybody except the French people, and there are currently massive protests in Brussels, Belgium, with half the government resigning in protest against the government signing a pact that will replace the Belgian people with migrants from Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. The corrupt and despicable government who signed this pact represents foreigners and George Soros money, not their own people. That people are disarmed and are propagandized to accept violence from the state against them, but not to deliver violence in return against government's illegal use of force against the people of that country. So in short, until the conquered peoples of Europe deal with the police, who serve the ruling elite and delight in inflicting brutality against those whose taxes pay their salaries, unless they take the weapons from police and try and convict the corrupt politicians who've sold them out, the people of Europe will remain a conquered and oppressed people. The question before us is whether the Western people are too brainwashed, too firmly locked into the matrix, too exhausted to stand up and defend their freedom. Resistance is happening in France and Belgium, but the government that sold out Greece hasn't been dealt with yet. Americans are so brainwashed that they think Russia, China, Iran, Syria, North Korea, and Venezuela are their enemies, when it's perfectly clear that their enemy is their own government in Washington's district of criminals.